Gilbert the Troll, Gilbert and the Hunters. Gilbert is a little boy. He is also a troll. And now a lot of people think that trolls live under bridges and are ugly and scary and big. That's not true. Trolls are merely different. Actually, trolls look remarkably like humans, but if you look closely, a little hairier, with longer feet. Gilbert lives in England with his mummy and daddy, in a beautiful place in the Norfolk Broads upper reaches. That part of the river is too shallow for anything other than rowing boats to navigate. It's a wild and natural place, surrounded by woods and fields. Gilbert is 9.5 years old and goes to the village school, along with the human children, who accept him as a little different, but good fun. His best friends are Graham and Carl, who like Gilbert's sense of adventure and mischief, and help ensure that sometimes he doesn't get himself into too much trouble. Like all his friends, they watch out for each other. Carl and Graham being a little more cautious and sensible than Gilbert. His house is hidden in the bank of the river. It has 2 small bedrooms and 1 big kitchen and living room with a roaring fire most of the time. Gilbert's mum cooks over the fire or in a small wood-burning stove, and the house is always cosy. Their diet is what humans call vegetarian. Many of the plants they eat are no longer eaten by us, as trolls recognise more berries, leaves and mushrooms than humans, and they grow much of their own food. The rest comes from the forest around them. One day, after Gilbert had done his chores, he went out to play with his friends. They played carefree in the woods. Gilbert's favourite game, 1, 2, 3 Dunya, was a version of hide and seek. As the 3 friends ran playing, Douglas and Aggie, 2 of Gilbert's rabbit friends, hopped out of the undergrowth. They had heard the commotion the boys were making and came to say hello to Gilbert. The boys had seen Gilbert talking with the animals many times before, but still wondered how they understood each other, for animal speak is a language that humans have long forgotten. The rabbits asked Gilbert to come to Troll Island to see if Archibald Troll would sit with them and tell one of his stories of the olden days. At one time there was a whole village of trolls on the island, which even had a school and shops. Archibald was very old and the last survivor of island life. Gilbert hadn't taken any of his human friends there, for it was the discovery of this place that had led to the hunting down and killing of nearly all the troll inhabitants. After many years living a life hiding in the woods, Archibald had crept back to his old home, hoping some of his friends may do the same. But alas, only 3 trolls had survived that terrible time, and the other 2 were too scared to set foot ever again in their old village. Gilbert said goodbye to his friends and set off with the rabbits. As they passed quietly chatting through the forest, they greeted the other animals and they saw along the way. It was a beautiful late spring day. The sun shone between the trees and into the clearings. Insects buzzed in the air and the birds sang out to them from their nests as they passed by. Suddenly, Gilbert saw Douglas stop and stand upright with his ears erect as rabbits do. He banged his foot on the ground and whispered a warning to Gilbert to hide. It was then Gilbert too heard a strange noise. His friends knew what was coming and made sure Gilbert had listened to the warning thump as they ran to hide in their burrows. Gilbert sank back into his hiding place and peeped out when he knew exactly where the noise was coming from, so he could get a good look at what was causing the alarm. As he peeked out, he saw 2 pickup trucks racing along a lane in the forest, and he felt fear grip his stomach. He had seen them before when men were out hunting some of the other animals, but somehow Gilbert knew they were out hunting trolls. The men did not notice Gilbert, drove by, and as soon as they had passed, Gilbert carefully ran home, darting between the cover of trees and bushes. He rushed back to tell his parents what he had seen. Mum and Dad immediately closed the shutters and doused the fire, and gathering up a few belongings, they set off into the woods. Their little home was now entirely hidden to the casual gaze. As they moved deeper into the woods, Gilbert realised they were heading to the secret hiding place that only he and his parents knew. He was never allowed to go near it with his human friends. It was a big old oak tree with a small hollow in the trunk that led to a hidden perch in the tree's centre between the branches. They moved quickly and quietly towards it, until, from the stillness of the forest, emerged the sound that Gilbert had heard before. All of a sudden, the trucks were just behind them, with the men yelling at each other, and Gilbert knew they were searching for him and his family. He felt so afraid that he stopped running and just hid, stock still in the undergrowth. When he looked up, he realised his mummy and daddy had not seen him stop, and they were now separated from him by the two trucks. Gilbert's daddy signalled for him to run in the other direction. The trucks were headed towards his parents, who were scurrying through the woods in this dangerous game of hide and seek. Gilbert could hear the sound of the hunters' engines and the occasional shout in the background, and then two loud bangs rang out, and Gilbert knew it was the sound of a gun. He kept running, and slowly the sounds faded into the background. After some time, and completely out of breath, Gilbert stopped, and he realised he was lost and it was getting dark. He could no longer hear any sounds except the familiar calls, as all the nighttime animals came to life. He hid inside the trunk of a half-rotten tree and cried quietly to himself, so scared that something might have happened to his mummy and daddy. He was cold and alone, and he felt so sad. Why would these men want to harm him and his family? At last, he fell asleep. Gilbert woke cold and damp at dawn, and as he remembered the events of yesterday, he fought back his tears. He just wanted his mummy and daddy and his warm bed. As the sun started to shine through the trees and Gilbert sat wondering what to do, he heard a rustling in the leaves. Just as he was about to run for cover, a familiar face greeted him, and he breathed a sigh of relief. There, in the clearing next to his tree, stood a deer. Her name was June. He'd often played with her in the afternoons after school, and they had explored the forest together. June nodded her head at him and scratched her hoof in the dirt, telling Gilbert to follow her. With his friend leading the way, Gilbert soon found his bearings, and after a few short minutes he found a trail that had his tracks on it. It was still a long way to his home, but at least now he knew the way. He thanked June and he told her to run off and warn her family about the danger in the forest. He was still so scared that something might have happened to his mummy and daddy. He tried to hold back the tears and concentrated on walking quietly just in case the hunters were still about. At last, Gilbert caught sight of his little house on the riverbank. He wanted to rush in and cry out for his parents, but he knew he still had to be careful. He approached the house slowly. The shutters were closed and there was no sound coming from inside. He waited a little while and then quietly walked up to the door and knocked on it. Imagine his delight when his mummy and daddy rushed out to greet him. His mum was crying tears of joy, and so was Gilbert. They had also been so worried about him, and they began to tell Gilbert off for getting separated, but that was Daddy's way of showing his love. Daddy stopped, gave Gilbert a big hug and said, "I love you, son," and they all cried together. Gilbert felt a wave of relief running through his body. Daddy said that even though it was unlikely the hunters would come back again, as they'd look in the other part of the forest now, it was better to play it safe and go and visit cousin Michael for a couple of weeks in Cornwall. And that brought a big smile to Gilbert's face, as he loved visiting Michael. The next day they all set off to Cornwall and Gilbert's next adventure.